young men, we ain't scared of no cops, okay? So I wanted to be here to be a part of this movement.
Right,
and that's how I feel.
Hopefully a movement that'll change things around the world, you said, you know, and police, we shouldn't be afraid of police. They're supposed to protect us, right?
They're supposed to protect us.
And that brings me to Tina. You and I were talking about how this is a conversation we need to have with our children about, you know, the good people and the bad people, right?
That's right. That's my main concern is the children. If you look around, you see all the parents with their children. And my concern is if you would talk to your children, let them know what's happening. Just don't bring them out, you know. Educate them on what's going on because everybody is not bad. Exactly. You know, that was one bad man who did a terrible thing. So we don't want the children to grow up and think that everybody that's that skin color is bad, which is not true.
Or
every policeman is bad. So I just pray that the parents talk to their children, educate them on what's going on. Because when we're gone, that's it. All we have is our children. So at the end of the day, we can't change nobody's heart. You know, the Bible says what is in your heart, that's you. We can't change that. If you feel that you hate somebody, you don't like anybody, we can't change that. But we're hoping that that happened with George Floyd will change the world and change a lot of people's heart. So my main concern is the babies, the children.
Absolutely, and we're seeing a lot of parents, I think, are taking your perspective and actually bringing their children out here. If you look across the street, so many young children being brought out by their parents, parents wanting to educate their children about this historic moment, especially like Lena was talking about, how the words that George Floyd said, some of his final words, calling out to his mother. People out here, I saw one woman with a sign that said, Mama. It's just impacted a lot of people out here. But for now, we're going to toss it back to you guys.
All right, Ivory Hacker, thank you so much. Joining us live right now is Pastors Remus and Mia right here at the Fountain of Praise Church. Beautiful service today at your church. I think everyone talked about how smooth this service went today. I want to just ask you the feeling, you know, it was a long service, and we talked about, we went with the Spirit, right? But your thoughts on just this service, this homegoing for George Floyd?
I think it was amazing. As a matter of fact, I think it was one of the best homegoing services that I've seen, primarily because the speakers were good, the music was wonderful, Reverend Sharpton had a very thought-provoking message, and even the iconic Bill Lawson, you know, to see him sitting there and talk about his civil rights journey. And then dear Reverend Dr. Ralph West talk about the way that God had blessed him and blessed his congregation. I think it was wonderful, everything.
What was the moment for you, Pastor Mia?
You know, the moment for me was the young man that spoke about George Floyd being a part of his basketball camp and the program and how he inspired so many people. Because a lot of people think that only George Floyd's legacy will be what has happened after his death. But they don't realize how many lives that he impacted while he was living.
That's right.
So that was a turning point for me, and I'm really grateful to know more about his life.
We also talked about, go ahead, Lena.
No, I was saying we were talking about the family and how they've exhibited such grace, and it's been such a time of emotional intensity for people. What's been the most inspiring moment that you've had in the last 2 weeks that helps you stick to your faith and say, I see the Lord in this moment?
Well, you know, I think just seeing the people all come together, people from every race. Yesterday was amazing. For the walkthrough viewing, there were thousands of people from everywhere, people from not just the city of Houston, but from all over the world, every ethnicity truly represented, showing a force of strength together in unity that we are all human. We're part of the human race. And what has happened means there is time for change.
This world has been reawakened, well, I should say this country has been reawakened to the need for harmony, unity, and togetherness. And the people that came through here on yesterday, the tears that you saw them cry, the way that they shared their gifts, they brought flowers, they brought food, they brought everything. You know, you could tell that, you know, that in and of itself shows us that there's hope for America. There's certainly hope for America and race relationships in America.
You both talked about, when I interviewed you a few days ago, you wanted this to be a service that was filled with healing and restoration for the family. We know the world was watching, but do you feel like we felt that? I know a lot of people felt that it was that moment, that it really was a family, it felt like a family service to me, at least. I was inside.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was just going to say before Mia says this, I was going to say that Reverend Stephen Wells, Dr. Stephen Wells, he pastors South Main Church down on Main Street. He was here, and he's a white brother that spoke so poignantly about the need for white churches and black churches to wake up and recognize that we've got a serious condition in America. It's a broken condition, and we need to fix it. And so, that really touched me. It moved my heart to hear him say that.
Yeah, you know what? I just want to ask you too, because you've done such a tremendous job with this huge undertaking of sharing the family, the pain, the experience, your church with so many. And tell us what the feedback has been like for you. I mean, what do you feel in your heart when you see the response that you've seen today?
You know, I think the tradition of the African American church is to have a homegoing celebration, and that's what we saw today, a celebration. There was incredible singing. Some of the Houston's and the nation's best singers were here. Incredible, inspiring speaking. People from the family who shared out of their heart. But it wasn't mournful. It wasn't a dredge. It was a celebration. And I think that's where we move from here. From this point, we move from the point of how do we honor the legacy of what has happened, take from this moment and build something positive that impacts the rest of the world, so that the United States truly is a great place to be.
All right, Pastors Remus and Mia Wright, thank you so much. Everything the last couple of days has been so organized, so peaceful. So kudos to you and your team for everything.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for taking the
God
time.
bless you.
Thanks so much. We know you have to get going, so we appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Take care.
All right, well, we're going to take you back live, I believe, to the hearse that is making its way toward Pearland. I believe we may have that shot up as people are making their way to look at it. We've seen some people lined up along the Beltway and in some of the neighboring areas. So we expect that the hearse will make its way there to Pearland. Probably another 15 or 20 minutes, I would say.
Approaching Scott Street right now, and so you do see even more people lining the procession route, which we've seen from outside the church on down to the Beltway, 288, and now approaching. And you see in the upper left that we're showing you along the procession route as well. And we have Ivory Hecker, who's live along the procession route, and she's spoken to people who have been out there in the sun during a heat advisory for hours, hoping to just be a part of this moment. Everyone that she has spoken to, and Randy Wallace has spoken to, just confirming what we've been seeing here at the church, and the people that we've spoken with, is that they see this as not just a flashpoint, not just a moment, but really a movement and a time in history that they want to be a part of. Not only to walk away as being a part of history, but also giving to the family, hoping that the family will feel the love.
Mm-hmm. And Al Sharpton, in true Al Sharpton fashion, spoke during his eulogy. He said, a lot of people are skinning and grinning in front of the cameras right now, but when the last TV camera is gone, people still need to be speaking up. People still need to be taking action. And so he was really calling out a lot of the leaders in our community who are speaking up now, but saying, okay, once this particular moment is gone, once George Floyd is buried, we need to continue this conversation. We need to continue pressing for legislation, he felt. We also, speaking of legislation, we saw several members of Congress were here coming in from their various districts. Of course, Sheila Jackson-Lee and Al Green spoke, our congresspeople here in Houston, but we saw people from various districts, congressmen from as far away as New Mexico be here, really to show the cohesion between the Congressional Black Caucus. And there were other members of the caucus who were here, and other members of Congress who were not black. Lizzie Fletcher, of course, from our area, who was also in attendance today.
Mm-hmm. And Mayor Turner speaking as well, and then former Vice President Joe Biden, who left a video message. You remember that we shared with you some pictures of when he met with the family personally, one-on-one, to give his condolences in person, face-to-face yesterday, saying that he didn't want to attend the funeral because he didn't want the distraction of the security detail that's required for a former vice president, and that it does take a lot of resources away from the moment in any city, anytime a former vice president is in town and in the area, and he didn't want to distract from that, and then left the video behind. That a lot of people said that they were touched by the words. Even Al Sharpton, I believe, referenced part of the message and some of his words, some of Biden's words as well.
Yeah, and I think that you speak about that. The vice president not being here definitely, I think, may have changed the mood of the service in terms of just the way people moved around. Even though there were celebrities in the audience, like I said, J.J. Watt was sitting right in front of me. No one was really speaking to him. No one was paying him any attention, really, because he was just one of the people there as a guest. I saw Al B. Sure. I also saw Jamie Foxx there. No one was really speaking to them because they also did not want to take away from this moment. So it was great to have them in attendance, I think a lot of people felt, but not a distraction. connection. They weren't on the program. They were not recognized in the audience, but they were, well, Jamie Foxx was at one point, I believe, but for the most part, they were there just to be a part of this moment like all of us.
And in the upper left-hand corner, we're showing you just outside, you saw the sign there of Houston Memorial Gardens. That is in Pearland, and that is where George Floyd will be interred. That will be where he will be laid to rest next to his mother. And in that final mile in front of the cemetery, for that final mile, you will actually see a change in what you're looking at in the larger box that you're seeing on your screen, where the hearse will no longer be the hearse that takes him into the cemetery. His body will be taken, the casket will be taken from this current hearse that you're seeing now on the roadway and transferred to a horse-drawn hearse to be taken into the cemetery. And that might be why we saw so many people lining both sides of the street, where Randy Wallace is, just outside of the church there, but really all along the way, and we're still seeing it here, people lining the roadway to be a part of the moment.
Being a part of the moment, as a lot of people have been a part of the moment for the past couple of weeks. This is unlike anything we've seen, because this is not a one-day thing. People have been protesting for days. People tell us they will continue protesting. We see these families out here, and a lot of people talk about how the civil rights movement was not a one-day thing. It was not a 1 month or even really a 1 year thing. In many ways, it was a movement that took place over a period of time, and so a lot of people talking about this moment here does not stop with George Floyd being buried. It does not stop with the protests. Whether they continue or not, we have to keep this going, because that's truly what a movement is. A movement is not a day, it's not 2 days, it's not a speech. A movement is really something that could take a lot longer.
Well, let's take a look, too, for some perspective. Let's remember, this has been 15 days. 15 days since he passed away. And it's been 15 days of nationwide protests, demonstrations from coast to coast, calls to action, moving overseas, where we've seen people in different countries showing solidarity with this movement, with this moment in time. We've seen it outside of the U.S. Embassy in Berlin. We've seen it in Paris, France, in front of the Eiffel Tower. As far away as Hong Kong, in Iran, there's a mural. So people are really focused on this moment, and they're feeling it reverberate throughout the world. And right now, the eyes of the world are here on the city of Houston. And you remember that Governor Abbott had said that he was proud of Houston and the way that the city has handled the moment.
That's for sure. Right now, you're looking again live at the hearse. So we understand that the hearse is right now about a half a mile away moment for the family, so we won't be showing you that live on our air, but we will be leading up to that as it makes its way there to the cemetery.
So we do have several people in our team coverage where we are covering the procession route so that you can be a part of that. Of course, we brought you the service before it started, and then during the service we brought that to you live as well. The only part, as we've mentioned, is the actual interment, the actual burial. That will be the private moment that the family is taking for themselves. But so much of the other experience of this has been shared with the world, very personally, very privately, very openly and honestly with the family. As you said, being at the other memorials that happened in Minneapolis where George Floyd took his last breaths, also in North Carolina where he was born, and then here to Houston where he considered it to be his hometown, and not just the city of Houston, but the 3rd Ward and Yates High School. You know, Ivory was talking to someone who was also a graduate of Yates High School, and they have that together. They have that moment, that camaraderie and that kinship. And
yeah, Jack Yates has such a proud, rich history. Their alumni so strong. Sometimes when I meet people, they don't ask what high school you went to, what college you went to. A lot of times in Houston is, what high school did you go to? And if you said Jack Yates or Worthing or Booker T. Washington, for many people it is that means more. Like where you went to high school, that kind of says a little bit about you and how you grew up. So right now you're looking at the hearse as our live shot here from Skyfox as the body of George Floyd is making its way now down Cullen. Again, this is right here, very, very close to where the cemetery is. Randy Wallace is there, and he's been bringing us live reports. And again, this is where George Floyd's final resting place will be, right next to his mother. And we heard about his mother during this service today. In fact, his aunt said, I can't talk about George Floyd without talking about his mom.
No, I don't even know.
So again, you're watching this live right here as it's making its way down Cullen Boulevard. And we, of course, will take you up to that moment, that private moment up until then, where the family will be part of this burial service. There also, Lena, is a repast happening not far from here as well. And for those who don't know what a repast is, after a lot of funerals, a lot of people get together. It's a way to just sort of, I would say in many ways, decompress from the moment, to celebrate the person's life. Usually there's food, there's fried chicken, there's macaroni and cheese.
There's laughter.
There's laughter. There's a lot of things. But it's a way for people to just sort of take off their heels, take off their shoes, and really, just remember the person in more of a less formal environment.
And they're expecting, or they're prepared for 1,500 people at Bethel's Birthplace of Faith, and Natasha is actually over there. And this is something that it's part of the experience. Jonathan had mentioned earlier that, once you were in the sanctuary, when we took you in there for the funeral, that it is.
This is a moment for the country. This is a moment for the world that is watching. I had friends from across the country watching and talking and commenting about this funeral. They said this felt like a very Southern Baptist funeral, but they loved it. It was very true to Houston. It was very true to who George Floyd was. And that was the purpose of having this service at Fountain of Praise, a place that his family knew well. He had several family members, including his cousin Sharita, who went to this church. They mentioned her several times during the service. So they wanted it to feel like family, and I think they accomplished that.
And so we're giving you multi-views here at the procession. One from Skyfox up in the air following the procession, as we have been since they left Fountain of Praise, but then also 2 viewpoints on the ground too. And I just want to point out, this is 2 different locations. This is one along the procession route and one very near the entrance of the church in the cemetery in Pearland. And you see that people are lining the streets on both sides of the streets along this procession route. And this is on what is a heat advisory day, the first one of the year, and several of the people having been out there for hours waiting for this moment.
Yeah, and of course you see a lot of people still have on their masks because we are very much in a pandemic in COVID-19. It was interesting. A couple of people talked about in the service, social distancing sort of flew out of the window. Originally, they were going to only have 500 people. We're hearing it was closer to 800 inside the sanctuary today. But as Pastor Lawson says, hey, we're all Christians. So I think everyone just sort of was hoping and praying that everyone kept on their mask and stayed as distant as they could, considering everyone wanted to be there in that moment who knew George Floyd well in the sanctuary to honor him.
And look at the line of cars, too, which is representative of so many people and so many families who wanted to be a part of the moment as well. And you're seeing how many people along the procession route. And remember, this is just flashpoints here of certain areas. But as soon as we saw the procession leave here, we saw this kind of attendance, people lining the streets, too. And I wanted to talk in one of the shots we had, a shot of someone brought an American flag, it looked like, with them as well. And here, when you got off Highway 90 along Hillcroft, there were dozens of American flags along the median to kind of point you in the direction of where you were going, to represent that this is not an anti-America movement. They were saying, Al Sharpton saying, we're not standing against anyone. We just want the law to apply to everyone equally. And you see so many people wanting to be a part of the moment. And now as the procession is slowing down to a stop in just this one moment, we are seeing young, old, different ethnicities. We're seeing little children here, and we had talked about how the families and the parents said this is not the time to shield our children, but to bring them into this conversation.
Yeah, and you see some people being very quiet, some people taking pictures because this is a moment in history, unlike any most of us have seen in our lifetimes. And then you have people who are really just soaking up the moment and being very quiet. Others, we saw one lady jumping up and down because many people do view this as a celebration. I know that seems kind of foreign to some people, but it is truly, many people feel a homegoing celebration. When someone dies, of course you mourn, of course you grieve, but you also celebrate their life and what it represents. And so that's why you see some of these moments in his service that were filled with laughter, and you see people like Kathy Taylor singing, and you feel the spirit, because that is what a traditional service like this in a lot of churches, especially Black Baptist churches, that's what it's like.
And Pastor Mia had said that too when they came over to speak with us briefly. She had said that. She said this is very much a celebration of life, and you could feel that. You had the singing, you had the clapping, you had people just feeling the moment, and that's representative of now what we're seeing now following the procession route as well.
Yeah, this is incredible. Just look at all the people who've lined up here. We haven't even gotten, I don't believe, to the actual horse-drawn hearse. So these are just people who are lined up there in the Pearland area. So let's just take a moment and just watch this. I think this is just such a big moment.
Sometimes silence is golden. Listen to the sound of the drum.
And now we are looking at the transference of the casket from the hearse to the horse-drawn hearse. So out of respect, we'll just let you watch this moment without speaking.
Yeah, that's it.
Now the casket of George Floyd has been transferred to a horse-drawn hearse. That means that we're in the last mile of his journey as we now watch as they take the hearse and the carriage to Memorial Gardens in Pearland. That's where he will be laid to rest and interred next to his mother.
A beautiful tribute here, a beautiful casket, that golden casket inside the horse-drawn hearse, and you see several people walking along there. Some of the folks from Fort Bend Memorial Planning who've been covering the services and who've been doing the funeral service, I should say. But look along here, the route, as they make this slow procession here. People from across Houston and presumably people from across other cities and states are here to pay their respects to George Floyd on his, what they're calling, final mile.
And one of the things that you might have noticed as they were transferring the casket from hearse to hearse is a member of the Youth Ranch Ministry Riders saluting and then touching the hearse to say a final farewell as well. And you might have also seen some of the football balloons, because he did play football as well as basketball at Yates High School as well. So just so many tributes to say that, you know, people know him as a man. They know a little bit about his life now, and that's because of the family willing to share so much. As you say, when you were in the sanctuary, just those montages of the moments and the pictures of things that you would not normally see outside of being a member of his family.
Right, because so often, pretty much most times when we cover a funeral or when we go to a funeral, we're talking about the person's life and everything that they did. Maybe we knew them from childhood. But this is a case where most people feel connected to George Floyd because of his death, because of the way he died. So today, I think people got to learn a little bit more about him if they didn't know already, the type of person that he was, the type of father that he was, the comedian that he was. And so a lot of people here will always remember this moment, and we always think back to where we were in moments in history, whether it be as journalists or as everyday citizens. And this is one of those days where we're going to remember exactly where we were. We're going to remember these pictures here of the people who've showed up in our city, Houston, Texas, to honor one of our own.
And for hundreds of people, when they look back on this day and remember where they were, it will be right here, lining the procession route, because just outside of the church and all along the route, we've seen it making its way to the cemetery here. We've seen people lining the streets in both directions, on both sides, people that have pulled over even in the middle of the highway onto the median to say their final farewells as well. And then in this last mile and a half is when we've seen the majority of the people knowing that they would not miss this moment.
They did not want to miss it. And Randy Wallace is standing by live at the cemetery where the casket will be making its way in just a moment. So Randy, are you seeing a crowd where you are?
Oh yeah, Jonathan, there's hundreds of people here waiting to see George Floyd's final mile. I have a couple of ladies here with me. What brought you out here?
Hi, I'm out here because this is history. This is a monumental time to respect the African American culture. I'm out here as a mother standing for my sons, my two black sons. I'm out here standing for the black race. I'm out here standing for all educators. I'm out here because this is the civil rights of 2020. I'm out here for pride, to say that I'm a black mother, I'm a black sister, and that I'm standing with the family of George Floyd, with Trayvon Martin, with Breonna Taylor, and with all of the people who have had crimes done against them unlawfully, for the very same people who were supposed to protect our race and us feel safe. I'm out here with my sister pridefully as we celebrate what's happening today.
What brought you out?
You know, one of Martin Luther King's famous saying is that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And there was an injustice 2 weeks ago on May 25th. For 8 minutes and 46 seconds, there was an injustice with a knee on George Perry Jr.'s, Floyd Jr.'s neck. Yes. And that injustice is not just in Minnesota. That injustice is through all 50 states, and it's not just on the streets. It's in the courtroom. Yes. It's in the classroom. Yes. It's in corporate America. Yes. So I'm here like my sister. Yes. I'm standing on the shoulders of Martin Luther King. Absolutely. And Rosa Parks. Absolutely. And all of those moms. When George Floyd called his mother's name, my heart bled. Yes. Because I too am a mother of a black son. I have lost my mother. So when he called his mother, he called for a cry for help. So I stand here in this historical moment to be part of this movement today. That's why I'm here.
That was very eloquent. Thank you both so much. Again, we're waiting for the hearse, the horse-drawn hearse, which should be down here at any time. Hundreds of people are here for this historic moment. I'll throw it back to you.
Randy Wallace, thank you so much. And hundreds of people from across the city of Houston, hundreds of people from 3rd Ward, people from across other cities. You know, it's just been incredible to see people who didn't necessarily know George Floyd personally, but they feel so connected to him. They feel like they know him. And look at all of these people here. Some are walking along with the horse-drawn hearse. Others just standing there, getting a moment, getting a photo that they feel like, as we heard, is a historical moment, a historical photo, someone that they will be telling their kids about and their future generations about this moment in time. George Floyd, a name that we didn't know necessarily a couple weeks ago or until a couple of weeks ago, but now, as we said, his name is being said in countries, in cities, and really around the world. Around the world, people are talking about George Floyd, and they are watching this moment happening right here in Houston.
Well, at this point now, in his final mile, we're seeing something that we haven't seen along the procession route, is people actually following along now, walking with the hearse, almost escorting him as well, along with several law enforcement officers from multiple departments, walking along with the hearse, escorting him in his final mile before he's laid to rest next to his mother. Yeah,
and for so many people, Lena, it's so important to have these moments and to see a casket and to see a body. I spoke to a couple of people who came here yesterday, and they said, I had to see his body in person. I wanted to see him in the casket. They said it almost didn't seem real to me until I was able to really see him and really to, understand that this is a real life, a real death. You know, sometimes when things are a hashtag or it's a news story, you see it as that. But for people, at least some of them, they wanted to have this moment to really absorb and take in what this really is, a really tragic moment many people feel, and a death that should never have happened, people feel.
And I think we're hearing cars honking as well. I was wondering if it was music at the first because it was so faint, but we're hearing cars honking as well. And that's sometimes a way that you let the people know that we're with you as part of that. And, we were talking about the celebration of life, the celebratory moments. And it may sound odd, especially if you were not following as well.
All right, so we're going to listen in right here just for a moment, Lena, and take in some of the moments here at the procession, his final mile.
Both of them done a good job.
All right, and you're again watching live here the procession, George Floyd's final mile, making its way to the cemetery in Pearland, along with a lot of people from across the community. You are seeing media from across the community. Lena, we've been talking about some of the people we've been able to talk to out here from across the world. There is global interest in the name and the life of George Floyd, and so you're seeing a lot of people capturing these moments that are again now being broadcast around the world.
And when we were letting you listen to this moment as well as seeing it, we heard the shouting of no justice, no peace. And here, before the procession left, we heard chanting of we will breathe as well. A lot of times the chanting in moments like this is a way of bringing people together into one moment, one collective voice. And you are seeing law enforcement walking side by side. You remember that Chief Art Acevedo had said that it would be an honor if the family would allow the Houston Police Department and his officers to be a part of the escort as he came home here to Houston, and then also as a part of this procession. And there were hundreds of law enforcement officers from multiple agencies here at the church and part of the procession as well. And so we're seeing that walking side by side, and we have seen the signs BLM for Black Lives Matter in the hands of people as well, and other signs laid out on the lawn as well, just showing their solidarity in the moment. And hopefully you have to hope that the family does see this and does feel the love, especially in his own hometown.
Yeah, in his hometown, a place that George Floyd loved so much. He loved Houston, Texas, of course. He had moved out to Minneapolis to start a new life. Some of his family members had said, but Houston was always home. It was a place he loved, and it was a place that he grew up here. And I love some of the stories that his brother has shared over time, talking about how they loved making mayonnaise and banana sandwiches, and how he and his two brothers, George and his two brothers, Phil and Rodney, slept in the same bed. And so they were very tight growing up, and how this man who grew up in what many would consider an underserved community has now affected the world as he takes his final mile here, making his way to the cemetery. A very private moment for the family, very large family that George Floyd had. A lot of people loved him across Houston, across his community in Third Ward. And despite this heat index that we're dealing with today.
And this is the first heat index day that we've had this year. Yesterday was, about the same. It wasn't too far off of this. But still, we saw thousands of people waiting in line for hours to get on the trolley to come here to the church, to wait hours to go inside the church. And then out here, where we've seen our reporters, Ivory Hecker and Randy Wallace, talk about that the people that they've spoke to have been out there for hours braving the heat because, they were so wanting to show their support and wanting to be a part of the moment. And that was some of the calls that we heard during the ceremony and the funeral as well, when people were speaking, was that you must stand up. You must be a part of this. You must be an active voice. It's not enough to just shun racism or shun things that you see that may be wrong, but to be a part of standing up against it. And when we see this, it is encouraging to see so many people walking alongside the hearse in a moment where we have seen such division in so many places in the last 15 days, to see this moment of solidarity where we are seeing law enforcement and we are seeing people young and old and every ethnicity walking together to honor his final mile.
Yeah, and as I said, Lena, people have different views when it comes to George Floyd. Some people truly call him a fallen hero. I heard several people say they view him as a fallen hero in the sense of the way he died. As I said before as well, some people have said he's an icon of sorts in what he represents, someone who changed the world at 46 years old, and a man who is now going to his final resting place, perhaps not knowing just what kind of impact. I would assume he would not know what kind of impact he would have had. In fact, Pastor Dixon, one of the pastors, Bishop Dixon, said something I think a lot of people got rallied up about. He said when that officer put his knee on his neck, he thought he would be in some obscure funeral home with a few people and that would be it. But he said the officer probably had no clue that people across the world would react to his death, and that was a moment that a lot of people applauded inside the funeral, speaking to just how much this struck a chord with people of all races and really around the world. So you're seeing, again, live here on the bigger screen, the horse-drawn hearse making its way to the cemetery, the final resting place for George Floyd. Far away vantage point, but if you saw some of the closer shots that we had, Chief Art Acevedo was there among about, I'd say maybe a dozen or so officers walking alongside the hearse. As Lena said, it was an honor for them, they said, to be a part of this moment in history.
And it's probably the feeling of a lot of the people that we've spoken to and seen along the procession route, an honor to be a part of the moment in any way that you can. Not everyone had one of the 500 invitations to be inside the sanctuary. One of the men that Ivory Hecker spoke to said, I wasn't able to make the public viewing yesterday, but still saying, this may be my last chance to show my solidarity, to show my support, to show that I stand with this family and I support this family, and I want the family to see that their hometown, that his hometown loves him and will not forget his name. And also, after hearing the stories during the service as well, so many people realizing, again, that this is beyond a hashtag and beyond a movement as well, and that it is about a man named George Floyd, who we saw pass away and take his last breaths, as his niece said, 15 days ago. And in 15 days already, it seems so much has changed, so that you're seeing people come out in these types of numbers. As you're seeing from Skyfox, these are masses of people lining the procession route as we follow along with his final mile.
Yeah, and people showed up yesterday, Lena, as early as 7:30. You were out here early in the morning. People were showing up hours early before the viewing even started. People wanted just to have their moment. And, when things like this happen, everyone feels a different type of connection to the cause, to the person. And so for some people, I've talked to even some of my friends, they didn't show up to the funeral or the viewing, but they've been doing things on their own, really getting together with friends and talking about what we're going through, talking about the moment, calling some of their friends. So everyone is sort of reacting to the death of George Floyd in a different way. Not everyone necessarily protests or decides to come out and speak vocally, but a lot of people said this moment has changed my life, and they are now doing different things, even within their own communities, to bring about change and bring about some really difficult and tough conversations.
Interesting that you say that everyone is not reacting the same, but the fact is everyone is reacting. This is one of those cataclysmic moments where everyone has an emotion about it, everyone has a thought about it, everyone is having a reaction and a response, whether it is the same response and reaction as the person next to you, or maybe it's not, but everyone is reacting, and that's what some people are saying, that this has the potential to be a moment of change, the moment that you look back on and say that was the moment where we saw a big shift. And that's what a lot of people are saying they hope happens, because no one wants to see it happen at the cost of someone's life, but everyone's saying that this will not be in vain, which
right.
We heard so many times
and
today.
That's why so many people have said that they view George Floyd as a martyr, a hero, an icon, because of the change that has already come. Even within the last few days, in the last couple of weeks, we have seen change. We've seen city councils, not necessarily here in Houston, but in other places, present legislation when it comes to policing and police departments. We've seen several congressmen talk about new legislation, all within just a matter of days after his death. So sometimes people joke about how slow Congress and how slow some of our government leaders are to move, but this prompted quick action by a lot of people, and people who've never ever spoken out before about racism, people who've never attended a rally. This was the moment where they said, enough. I am joining this cause. I am speaking out. And I think that is, if anything, something that is powerful in itself. The rallies and marches are powerful, but it's sometimes the voices that are now speaking out and are audible that had been silent for so long.
And I'm really wanting to push this forward, too, hoping that this will not be the end of the movement and the moment, now that he will be laid to rest today. Al Sharpton, when he was giving the eulogy, made a point to say, vote. And that's something that George Floyd's brother had said days ago as well, when he was in Minneapolis, where he said it's the protests, the demonstrations are something that he recognizes, but he says but you must vote if you want change. So
that's something we're seeing in a lot of states. I believe Georgia had voting today. Several other states had voting today on Tuesday, and so it is prompting a lot of people to get out to the polls, regardless of your political affiliation, just to have your voice heard in a different way, not at a protest, not at a rally, but at the polls.
Which isn't to say that it hasn't been something that has been really, it will grab your attention, because as you say, in our lifetime, we've not seen so many people. I mean, we talk about one of the demonstrations that happened in Los Angeles over the weekend, 50,000 people in the street at one time in Los Angeles, and they said that was the largest protest that they have seen to date. So it doesn't seem that it is slowing down, that it is gaining momentum, which is something that the family said that they wanted to see, for this to move beyond just this moment, for it not to be a flashpoint. But to describe some of the people, see here, as we give you two different vantage points here of the procession as George Floyd makes his final mile here, one from on the ground and again above, up in the air with Skyfox, as we look at the horse-drawn hearse here to the cemetery where he will be laid to rest. We have seen Chief Art Azevedo out there walking. We had several pastors, both black and white, speaking at the funeral service here. We've seen people at the viewing who are still in their work uniform coming from work. We saw healthcare workers wearing their scrubs, saying that yes, COVID is a concern of theirs, but this is a greater concern of theirs, and that this affects their life on a day-to-day basis, whether there's a pandemic or not. And we've seen children in carts where their parents were bringing them, small children, wheeling them into the moment as well. And so many parents telling us that they just didn't want to shield their children from the moment, that this is the time to have that conversation. And during the service as well, Dr. Steve Wells saying it's not easy. Yeah. It's not easy conversation.
It's not easy conversation, but when he says we have to have, and one that we've had, but maybe not had enough. And so I think that was a moment for a lot of people to hear from Pastor Wells a different perspective. And, as we look at this, I do want to say, here in the city of Houston, I mean, things have been so smooth this week. I know a lot of my friends have been watching from other cities and states and have said kudos to Houston, not just to public viewing, but today, even the protest just a week ago where some 60,000 people showed up. Things, for the most part, have been very organized and very peaceful. Even today, a very serious moment, a very solemn moment as we lay George Floyd to rest. It's still gone very smoothly. Yes, the service lasted a little longer than people thought, but everything was pretty seamless and peaceful. No protesting even today here at the site where the funeral was. And so I think a lot of people in Houston really respected, regardless of how you feel about the situation, really respected the moment and what's going on in our city.
So as we take a wider view with Skyfox, you can see just how many people lined the the procession route. I remember this is the final mile. A lot of the people that you see moving along have followed the horse-drawn hearse as soon as they made the transference from taking the casket from the hearse that left here at the Fountain of Praise Church to the horse-drawn hearse in this final mile. So a lot of the people that you see walking along with the casket have been walking the entire length of this final mile. And once they do make it to the cemetery, this is the one moment that the family has chosen to carve out to make it private, to make it about the family, solely about them, as they've been so gracious in sharing this experience of theirs and the life of George Floyd with the world.
And you have to understand that. I mean, they've given so much. Here's a closer look at the carriages that's gone by, that beautiful gold casket. Again, Fort Bend Memorial Planning Service working with them to provide just a really beautiful service. Because you think about it, they've done 3 funeral services. The family was here in Houston. They went to Minneapolis to handle some things. They came back to Houston for the protest, then went to North Carolina for a funeral. Now they're back in Houston for a funeral. And you've got to think, going back and forth, grieving, it can't be easy. And so this moment, they really want it to be a private moment after this for them to get together just as family, because they have been sharing so much of themselves through interviews, through appearances at rallies. But this was also important for them to be visible. They all talk about that. It was important for them not to be quiet, but to use their voices and speak out and let people know who their brother was and who their cousin was. Because, you know, sometimes when things like this happen, people do like to sort of find negative things to talk about. And they wanted to say, no, let me humanize my brother. Let me humanize my cousin, and let you know who he was. We know who he was and what he represented, and I think that's why you heard a lot of the family members really vocal over the last couple of weeks.
And you and I were talking about that in the middle of the service, is that it did feel like a private ceremony. If you were to attend a funeral of someone that you've known from your childhood or someone in your family or a friend, it read like that, in that it had those personal, private moments where it is both sorrowful and heartbreaking in moments, but then also fun and a celebration, and reminding you of those moments where you connected and the memories that you have, that you will always have of something that happened that may seem small to others, but was really big and special to you. And you were talking about the scratching of the head, you know, his niece, and they even made a song about it, as families do. And because of that, so many people have said they see themselves in this family, as a part of this family, or can at least associate it and see what it's like, that this is, at the end of the day, this is a family who has lost a loved one.
Exactly. It's a daughter who has lost her father. It is a sister. It is a brother who has lost their sibling. I mean, that's what I really took away from this. And when I talked about it a couple of hours ago when we first came on the air for this coverage after the funeral, at one point I saw his daughter Gianna. She was being held by her uncle, and she sort of put her head into his chest, seeming overwhelmed by everything that was going on, because she's heard her dad's name being mentioned, I'm sure, everywhere. She's seen the pictures, but at 6 years old, my God, just imagine having to deal with that, really not maybe fully understanding everything that's going on, but it really just made me think about who is affected more out of all of this. Of course, all of us have perhaps been affected or been, compelled to do something, but for her, a little girl growing up without a father, I mean, that's real life for her now. And I think that being inside that church, that's a moment I took in personally.
And there are so many people, too, who really connected to that moment, and they did see hope in the moment where she said, now, famously, Daddy changed the world. And so many people connected to that moment, to see a little girl who's lost her father, but they saw that moment of hope, that could be, meaning that it wasn't in vain. And maybe this is the spark of change that so many people were longing for. And that's why so many people have connected to this moment, why people were willing to stand in 95, 100-degree weather for hours to be a part of this moment. It just shows you that people were hungry for the change, hungry for a moment that would move them to become a part of this, and to be something that you look back on as a moment of change.
And just to be present, because a lot of people continue to say, I just don't want to not be a part of this moment. It didn't feel right to just sit at home. It didn't feel right to just be silent. And so, as I said, some people don't have the words. They don't know what to say, but they feel that being here can speak volumes. And so a lot of the people that you saw lined along the route, they didn't say a whole lot. Or people here in the church, some of them came in very quietly, didn't have a lot to say, but just being here in the moment, and many feel being here in the spirit is something that is just so powerful.
And some people do that as well. Some people do mourn privately, and it is hard to find the words or find the actions. And so many people are moved to move in a different way, maybe not respond in this way where they wanted to be at a demonstration demonstration or they wanted to be along the procession route or come to the viewing, but reacting nonetheless. And so many people are reacting in different ways and then in similar ways. So many people that we've talked to, and we were in different areas, through our coverage here, talking to different people, but the message seemed to be the same. We were repeating a lot of the same things that people had told one of us is something that the other one had heard multiple times. Movement, part of history. I want to be a part of this. This is more than a hashtag. This is a movement. This is something that, I can see myself in. I am affected by this family. I saw that video and was called to action, even though it might be a private action. It might just be having a conversation with someone that you know privately. And that's an action and a response as well.
Yeah, and I think that is so true. Mothers, a lot of them saying, I felt that pain. I felt that pain when he said, he was calling for his mother, when he said, I cannot breathe. Words that have now been said famously by him, I can't breathe, and have been used as a hashtag. Again, this is a moment right here, the final moments of that mile. George Floyd being taken by this horse-drawn hearse to his final resting place here in Pearland. He will be buried next to his mother. His mother, of course, we heard about in the funeral today. A lot of people said it was just important for them to talk about his mother because she was so important to him. And so being buried next to him, being buried next to her, rather, just only seemed right to be in the ceremony, in the cemetery, rather, for this very private moment.
Now, you'll notice as they make their way through the cemetery, far fewer people than we saw just moments ago, because, again, this is going to be the private moment that the family has chosen to carve out for themselves. But to give you some perspective of how many people wanted to be a part of this moment, not only from Houston, but from other cities, other countries, other states as well. We had 6,300 people at the public viewing yesterday, and then today inside the service, inside the church, another 750, and then several hundred more, if not thousands, outside along the procession route as well.
That's right, and we're going to cut away from that shot because, as we have promised, that is a private moment for the family that they really wanted. They've shared so much of George Floyd and so many pictures and so many moments with us in allowing access inside the service. They did not have to do that, so we are cutting away from that moment as George Floyd will be laid to rest in his final resting place next to his mother. Just a very, very special moment. But we're going to continue our coverage right here with Fox 26 News at 5.
This is a time for the family. This is a time for the healing of the wound, of the pain that no one else in this place can walk and feel at this time.
Everyone, and welcome to Fox 26 News at 5. I'm Jonathan Martin, joined tonight by my co-anchor, Caitlin Monty. Thanks so much. I was having a little trouble hearing you, but we are live here at the Fountain of Praise Church. You just heard from Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, as she was one of several people who spoke today at this long but very powerful and spirit-filled service here at the church to honor Houston's own George Floyd. If you were just watching our special coverage, Caitlin, I know a lot of people saw George Floyd there at the cemetery in Pearland, his final resting place where he will be buried right next to his mother. Caitlin?
We have team coverage this afternoon taking you throughout the entire experience of what we saw. You can see reporters at the various locations where we saw Houstonians show up and show out in support, in beautiful, respectful support. So our team coverage this afternoon continues along the parade route where you just saw he was brought to his final resting place. We start with our Damalie Keith, who is live at Fountain of Praise Church, where a number of dignitaries and celebrities were in attendance for today's service. Hi, Damalie.
Hey there, Caitlin. Yeah, on screens all over the world, people watch this final tribute to George Floyd, a Houston native who was touching lives all over the globe.
This is a time for the family. This is a time for the healing of the wound, of the pain that no one else in this place can walk and feel at this time.
Yeah, that was Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee speaking. There's so many dignitaries and so many people spoke here today because so many people are very impassioned about paying their final respects to George Floyd.
So hard to say goodbye.
From R&B singer Neo singing at the service to Jamie Foxx and Albie Shore being in attendance to Vice President Joe Biden's video message.
No child should have to ask questions that too many black children have had to ask for generations. Why? Why's Daddy gone?
George Floyd's final farewell was a well-attended tribute to his life and addressed the tragedy of his death, dying under the knee of a Minneapolis police officer kneeling on his neck for nearly 9 minutes.
I don't know if I'll ever get 8 minutes and 46 seconds, Reverend Sharpton, out of my DNA.
All I think about is when he was yelling for mama. And I know how mama is. She's just right there. She got her hands wide open. Come here, baby.
I believe my grandmother was right there with open arms saying, come home, baby. You shouldn't feel this pain.
George Floyd was not expendable. This is why we're here. His crime was that he was born black.
Gone and
Listen to him. Listen to him. Not today. Hey, not today. Let's comply. Not today.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now. Now I see what you mean. Yeah, I think it's gonna take years before we know what happened these past few months and whether it was right or wrong. But thank you, Freddie, for clarifying that for me. We're going south. Oh no, we're going north on 3rd Avenue.
Don't stand around because you guys are being part of the problem instead of joining us to be part of the solution. Silence is violent! Silence is violent! Silence is violent! Silence is violent! Silence is violent!
Nobody's lighting stuff on fire, RT.
Silence is violent!
That's weird, Lindy. I'm sorry to hear that.
Silence is violent! Silence is violent! Silence is violent! Silence is violent! Silence is violent!
Yeah, maybe in the beginning of the stream, like when I first started streaming about a week ago, yeah. But not anymore.
Silence is violent! Wake up, wake up! Wake up, wake up! Wake up, wake up! Wake up, wake up!
Yeah, Lucas is saying silence is violence. Oh, okay, RT. RT, sometimes people in chat just like say provoking things because they want to see violence. They said anything about when they need to do something. That's saying, it's probably gonna end in the next day or two. I'm guessing. They're not actually saying when it's gonna end. I don't think anybody knows when. It's just a matter of when people stop showing up.
He's 30th.
How does a business make a lot of money during a protest? Artificial intelligence equals meltdown? I don't know what artificial intelligence means. Greater than... Oh, guys, Fox News reached out to me yesterday, and they said they were going to use some of my footage on Fox News. And they wanted my permission to use my footage. But I don't know when I don't know when they're going to use it. Still waiting on the press card. What? Yep. What's up? How are you? Yeah, I saw you at Union Square before, right? Yeah. Thank you. Good seeing you. Everybody drink. We saw a fan. Okay, we got 185 people on the stream. Thank you guys for showing up for another protest. We out here, we doing it. We documenting everything. Real shit. Yeah, I mean, if a news outlet wants to use my footage, I'm gonna let them use it. It's fine. CNN or Fox or whatever. I wasn't peeping nothing, brother. I disagree with at least half of what Tim Pool says. I think I do like Tim Pool, but he's a bit hyperbolic, and he exaggerates a little bit. He makes it seem like the world's burning down. I think it's over-exaggerated. Doomed friend. Kid of 2005 is back.
Non-violent! We are non-violent! Now, why do we say that? Because between 2013 and 2019, the police killed 7,666 people. Of those that they killed, no charges were raised 99% of the time. This means that if a police officer kills, they are 99% likely to get away with it without any charges. We have a problem because if I'm walking down the street, I'm inherently criminal. But if a police officer kills, they're protected by their damn police union. So what do we want? We want to disband police unions. For far too long, police unions have served to protect cops that abuse, kill, murder, rape, and abuse their power. Today, we heard that 50A has been repealed. This will let us know who is policing our streets. What is their history? How many allegations do they have? Because it's not a matter if they have them, it's how many. We need the world to see what they have been doing here. In Ohio, Sarah Grossman was protesting. The police tear gassed, maced Sarah Grossman to the point that she died. Sarah Grossman was 22. We want justice for Sarah Grossman too. We want justice for Breonna Taylor. We want justice for George Floyd. We want justice for all our brothers and sisters who have been victims to police brutality and white supremacy. But there's no difference between those two. Now, we want to teach y'all something. We're going to teach y'all how to sign Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So the sign for Black Lives Matter.
Hold on.
Hey guys, so she is showing you guys the sign for black. Swipe across your eyebrow. Swipe across your eyebrow. And now the sign for lives is this handshake going up your torso, essentially. And the sign for matter, you can sign. Check. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, so the sign for matter is. Okay, so matter is matter at the face. So when you put it all together, or you can also sign this as well. Check. So you can do either or. Matter or matter. Okay, so all together, Black Lives Matter. Okay, we're gonna do it again. One second. I had to start
we also have a second sign for matter. We're going to bring our first finger and our thumbs together, pinkies out like we're fancy, and then when you start from the bottom around to the top for matter. We're going to do it again. Black Lives Matter. Or Black Lives Matter.
That's cool. It's a good idea. Sorry you feel that way, Tone. What's up, Go Jump? How you doing, brother? Ah, Chris, you're too kind, brother. Too kind, my brother. I hope Fox News is not making crazy money off me. If they were, I hope I would be getting some of it. I don't know, Typhoid. They didn't go over that. Fox News page and the souls of the innocent. What's up, Keon? How you doing, brother? Free Fox News t-shirt. Yeah, they're talking about how to say certain things in sign language. They don't really talk about Trump. That's not. He doesn't really come up in this protest. Keon. Yeah, true, Freddie. It's a good point. I'm not sure about that, Kidder 2005. Hillary killed Epstein. What's up, Ramon from Spain? Keon, the graffiti vandal from the 90s? Carol Baskin definitely killed Epstein. Dukakis.
which is the police union for officers that wear a blue shirt in the city.
Oops, sorry.
He said, stop treating us, and I quote, stop treating us like animals and dogs, and start treating us with some respect. We've been vilified. It's disgusting. Our legislators abandon us. The press is vilifying us. It's disgusting. Hold on. He's not talking about us. He's talking about them. I think we're shaking up the city in this moment. One last thing that I have to say to you guys. The police unions are feeling the burn now. They treated us like thugs. They treated us like animals. They treated us like we don't have a life. And now that they're feeling it, that's hate. Speak on it. All right, y'all. One more time before we start voting. We're going to try this again to make sure we got it. Sign her name. Sign her name. Sign her name. Sign her name. Sign Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Wrap it up. All right, everyone stand up. Ready?
So guys, this is being made here. So since we have 200 people in, it's probably like about the average for the stream. What I'm going to say is the Amendment 50A has been repealed. So what that means is cops, their records will be made available, especially when they're in certain court situations. Like if they're being accused of something, typically the court doesn't have the ability to look at their record as far as past disciplinary acts and stuff like that. And somebody from the chat yesterday, we had a roundtable discussion on Twitch, was saying that even in the military, you know, if you're being scrutinized by a court, they're allowed to look at your previous charges or previous, I don't know what the right word is, but that has been officially repealed. So that's good because cops who have a terrible record will now be revealed, and it'll be a lot harder to protect them. And I think that's something everyone can agree on. At first, I thought it was like giving out their private information, but that was false. It's just the record of their previous. I don't know why I can't think of the word right now, because it's not their criminal record, but like previous claims against them. And that is what seems like a direct result of the protests. Tone Riggs, what am I wrong about? Tone Riggs, what am I wrong about? Conduct, that's the word. No, not right now, Erica. Actually, let me text Kev 1 second. Okay, I just texted Kev. The stream should be up soon. Tone Riggs. Okay, Tone Riggs, since you didn't answer my question, I'm just going to assume you're trolling. Yeah, previous misconducts. That's the word I was looking for. Previous bad misconduct will now be available. Where do you live? Quarantine is over. I live in Queens. Keep up. Oh, okay, typhoid. Got it. And something else one of the speakers mentioned was that the police union reached out to them saying that the legislators are abandoning them, which is their primary source of power, is the legislature, and they're being demonized and vilified by the news. And I think that's a victory as well, because the police union is definitely corrupt. And that's something, yeah, words are hard for me to say today. There's a lot of problems with unions in general, but the police, and a lot of good things as well. And the police union just seems to be all bad. I forget the name of this gimbal, but it works perfectly. What do you mean, June? What's up, Zach? Yes, police do have certain immunities, but Amendment 50A has also been used in specific cases of policeman conduct to protect the record of certain police individuals. I mean, the police have certain immunities, but they're not 100% immune. There's plenty of cases where police officers have been convicted of crimes. Yeah, the Clinton court case is interesting. We're gonna see what happens there. I'm definitely gonna make a video about the Clinton court case once there's a decision made. Yeah, it is rare that they're convicted of murder. Yes. Technically, the legal definition of murder is the unlawful killing. And police do have a heightened protection because they're pretty much in the business of killing. They have the monopoly on violence. So the system puts a lot of trust in a police officer's use of lethal force. But that's what needs to change. Because they're human. Ultimately, cops are human. And humans are easily corruptible. Humans have weaknesses and flaws. And there's just a lot of power for somebody to have, especially if they're not well vetted and not well trained. Yeah, we'll see. June, if you're in the Discord, if you're in our Discord, can you link some of those Supreme Court cases so we can read them? Sorry, Amos, the chat's moving too fast.